Hey guys, and welcome back to Now for Something Different. I'm back with my friend, Mr. Korean Cool. Good to see you, buddy. How you been?
Hola, buenos días. ¿Cómo
Oh,
está?
and you might have guessed, guys, or we did hint at it at the end of our last episode. That is a slight lead into our new episode because we're going to be heading to the Europe. We're going to be heading to Europe. I can make words, I promise. We're going to be heading to Spain because we're going to be talking about a film from 2012. We're going to be talking about a film called Blancanieves, which translates to Snow White for those people that are horrible with pronouncing Spanish words and you couldn't understand what I just said.
To which I will go ahead and apologize. In Spanish, you would say it as Blancanieves.
Oh, there you go. There's going to be a lot of him doing that because I'm going to be like really screwing with the Spanish language today. Never intentionally, guys. I love our people in Spain, but
Yes.
me pronouncing it is completely different. But yeah, so I'm really excited to talk about that. Actually, last year in March, we did Animation Month. I had on as a guest our good buddy Mike the Wildebeest, and we talked about the director Pablo Berger's animated film Robot Dreams. Before we do that, I figured I would talk to you and just ask you what you've been up to. Have you had the chance to read anything good or play a good game or catch anything good on the television?
Before we begin, I'm going to let you know right now, I'm going to be using my Antonio Banderas voice.
That's great. I love it. I love it.
But it won't be for too long because I can't keep it up. Anyway.
Puss in Boots voice.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like. Sounds like the Puss in Boots voice.
I love his. I love. Oh yeah, Puss in Boots. I love that. I love his accent. I love him. Period. This past week was the last week of my daughter's winter break, so we had to, unfortunately take her back. We really didn't watch much. It was mostly hanging out, cooking her favorite meals. Good Lord, that girl can eat. Holy cow. The only thing that we really caught up on was, Stranger Things season 5 has dropped.
Conclusion, yes, the big conclusion.
Right, so we went to start watching that, but my wife was like, I don't remember a lot of this. Can we go back and watch, the previous seasons? I was like, sure, why not? The other show that kind of hit the scene running was Fallout Season 2.
Ooh, nice.
Son and I are very much fans of Fallout, and this series really is something else in that it's taking us back and giving us like the real life interpretation, visualizations, articulations of Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, and my son and I are just geeking out at the scenery because we're like, oh my gosh, Bishop, look at the background. He's like, is that Prim? I was like, yeah, total goodness for, Fallout fans. However, let's just say Bethesda has been pooping the bed lately, in my opinion, with their Fallout games. They're still good games, but Fallout 3 really being brought to life has really been something to watch, and we've been enjoying it to the point, too, that we caught some news that there apparently is going to be a Fallout New Vegas remaster.
Oh, okay. Nice.
No, it's not okay.
You don't like
it's
the remaster?
not.
Oh,
Because now I got to drop more money. I got to buy it.
Dude, don't tell me about that. I mean, your daughter, I know, is a fan of Dragon Quest, and they've been doing that with the Dragon Quest games. But I will say, I'm excited about it because, just a side FYI here, the new Dragon Quest, I want to say it's 7 is coming out.
7, yeah.
The remaster on that. And I never played that because that was out for PS1 and I missed it its first time around. And I think it was out on the Nintendo DS, I think. I want to say it got released.
Yep.
But they're doing remasters on a lot of their older games too. Here's what I'll say. I watched part of the first season and I have to go back to it because it was really good. Yeah. Also, let's face it, anything with Walton Goggins, I'm in. I'm all in.
Walton Goggins he's one of those forces. So I don't know if you've ever seen it when, remember Major League, how that was a big franchise, Major League 1 and then Major League 2. Then they brought one, was it Major League, the minor leagues or the minors or something like, I forget the exact title.
Or something like that, yeah.
And it had Walton Goggins in it. Yeah, and that's where I first kind of quote, discovered Walton Goggins and digging into it and never realized he was perfect for that movie simply because he really was a ball player.
Oh, wow. So that I did not know. I didn't know he had a professional career as a ball player. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. So if you didn't know that, then you probably didn't know. So people have often wonder, the way he talks with that little bit of Southern drawl
Yeah.
And that little bit of an overbite he has. Well, the reason why he enunciates the way he does and the way he has that little bit of overbite is because when he was playing ball, he got his front teeth knocked out by a ball coming right at him.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I love him and him in Fallout. I think my son said it best last night because we just watched the newest episode last night. Walton Goggins is Fallout, and I was like,
Yeah.
I can't argue. He's bringing something that's just amazing to that
Yeah.
series.
Well, I
But
mean, I always brag about like, because he can do the dramatic, obviously, but like the comedy, dude. Oh my God. If you've seen the stuff,
oh
the vice principals, dude,
oh yeah,
I haven't laughed my ass off in such a long time when I watched that show. Or Baby Bobby Billy and the other
oh
one.
gosh,
You know what I'm talking about.
yeah, I do.
Price Gemstone. That's it. I mean, he's become a meme because it's hilarious. I mean, you can pick any clip that he's in, and he just takes that scene and he just steals it from everybody in the room. You
Yeah,
know?
he's amazing. I mean, even his little appearances. What not to dive too deep, but like
Yeah, yeah.
his appearances in Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, okay.
That was totally unexpected. And then to see him in his run with Timothy Oliphant in
Mhm.
Justified, that was an amazing series, by the way.
Yeah, both of
Justified
those I need
was,
to go back. I have to go back and
oh
watch
gosh,
because I've,
yeah,
I've heard such good things about both of those series, and I just
yeah,
there's so much stuff that's again we're diverging here, but that's okay. There's so much content being released between your typical like ABC, Fox,
right.
FX, and all that, but then you have the streaming stuff. There's so much content, so it's like in a perfect world, it's great, but it becomes almost just a matter of so many things slip through the cracks just finding time for all of it, you know what I
Yeah,
mean, and then
yeah,
differentiating which stuff is worth watching, which stuff isn't worth watching, you know what I mean, like there's
yeah.
just so much content out there, both a blessing and a curse, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, no doubt. How about you?
So this was mostly a rewatch week. Fargo, I haven't seen that movie since the theaters. I don't know why I haven't seen it since the theaters. I loved it when I watched it in the theaters, but I was flicking through Hulu and it popped up. The Coen Brothers. I don't know what's my favorite Coen Brothers movie, but it's got to be top of the list, man. Everybody's on top of their game. William H. Macy, Francis McDormand, Steve Buscemi, Peter Stormer, even John Carroll Lynch. He's barely in it, but he's great in the part that he has. As far as dark crime comedies go, it's hard to touch it, man. It's
Yeah.
absolutely hilarious. So I did that, and then I continued my laughathon, and I popped in My Blue Heaven with Mr. Rick
Oh,
Moranis and Steve Martin. And
yeah.
again, most of the people have seen this. Steve Martin's like an uptight FBI agent that's tasked with the responsibility of
Ah, flip
babysitting.
it. Rick Moranis is the
Yes,
FBI agent.
my
Steve
brain is
Martin.
obviously not working. Yeah, thank you for catching that because my brain sometimes, shits on me. But yes, yeah. So Rick Moranis, and you got Steve Martin playing this mobster, and he's tasked with babysitting him. And of course, he's a hard character to babysit. And you guys have probably already seen this movie. If you haven't, go on Tubi. It's absolutely hilarious. Joan Cusack's in it. She's great. It's another great movie, and I feel like that one gets talked about, but when we talk about Steve Martin and Rick Moranis, it probably doesn't get talked about as much as it should.
Yeah, we might have to bring that back, especially with the most recent news with Rick Moranis reprising his role as Dark Helmet.
Yes.
That we might have to do a couple, an episode where we go back because I think if we do that, I think I'm going to bring back Robin Williams and Rick Moranis's Club Paradise
Yeah.
with that, and we could talk Steve Martin, Rick Moranis, and My Blue Heaven. That's an
Yeah.
idea. We'll see what happens,
Do
folks.
like a drive-in episode where we'll give you a double feature or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I watched those two, and continuing my watch of short films, I'm trying to really like get into that because there's so many filmmakers that start off making short films and then their career kind of expands from there. So I found this animated short film on YouTube. There's two parts. I only watched the first part. It's only 3 minutes. It's called Old Night. It's directed by a guy named Gabe Hordos. He's worked on a bunch of animated stuff for like How to Train Your Dragon, stuff like that. It stars a guy named Jay Preston, who was on Game of Thrones, and then a guy named D. Bradley Baker, who's been on the film Avatar: The Last Airbender. And it's this little independent short series. And basically, the premise is it's this fantasy thing, and you have this old knight. He's been working in this medieval kingdom for years, and basically the king tells him, hey, guess what? You're too old. You can't do it anymore. We have to let you go. He kind of like fumbles out of the kingdom with his trusty horse, head down. He's distraught and sad. Lo and behold, he's caught up in this whole series of adventures because they're out of the kingdom for probably a day or two when then they're attacked by this evil dragon and they're fighting for their lives. And it becomes this tale of survival, him and his trusty horse, this old knight. If the idea is about them facing the many obstacles that come in their way, and then him dealing with proving to himself, but also proving to everyone else that, like, hey, just because I'm old doesn't mean I'm out of the game. It's a great little series, and it's well worth seeking out. So check that out on YouTube. Some interesting things. So because we were talking about AI, we've talked about it in a couple different episodes. They actually, this Gabe Hornos guy, he initially uploaded this to YouTube, and he had about 500,000 views, which to me is amazing. I'm like, 500,000 views, I'd be like, ecstatic. But he teamed up with a company called Chronicle Studios, and I'm going to just read this because I think it's interesting. They used his short film as a proprietary. They used proprietary AI as the content intelligence platform for the discovery, optimization, and audience growth of the film. And with this company and the use of AI, he was able to grow his audience from 500,000 to over 6 million. Here's a good example of a company that's helping a filmmaker, and they're doing it for good, which is awesome. So I figured, that's pretty cool. So yeah, that's a short film I definitely think everyone should check out. And then, I'm proud of myself, man. I dusted off the endless watch pile, and I found a movie that had been sitting in the plastic for probably 3 years. I don't know about you, but down here in Jersey, we have a Dollar Tree. It's a pretty popular chain. And up till about 2 years ago, they used to get a ton of DVDs and Blu-rays. And believe it or not, some of them were actually good. We had a bunch of Shudder titles in there. We had some stuff that just didn't sell at Walmart, so it would get moved to the Dollar Tree. And it was actually really good. I'd go in there and sometimes spend $5 or $6. But I dusted off a movie called CBGB. And it's basically about a club that was in the 70s and 80s. It was known for like punk rock and rock people. Basically, they started off there. It's a pretty big club in New York, and it's about how that came about. And the founder of the club, Hilly Crystal, who was played by none other than Alan Rickman, of all people. We were talking about Alan Rickman in last episode, so here I am tying that back. And Alan Rickman, like I said, is the owner of this club. He's not very organized. He's not the best businessman in the world, but the film's all about him and how this club came to be this epicenter for a bunch of famous rock bands. Like Debbie Harry premiered there, Sex Pistols were there, Lou Reed played there, Iggy Pop played there. The Ramones started off their career and played like a ton of shows there. And this is like one of these iconic clubs. Unfortunately, I think eventually he passed away, like in 2001 or 2002. And then it eventually, I think in 2006, unfortunately closed down. But in New York City, it was one of these iconic clubs that was just like a launching pad back when punk rock really wasn't like a mainstream thing. Now it's become much more mainstream, but back in those days, it struggled to find its place. And eventually it did, and it found its audience. It's a pretty good film. You got actors like I said, Alan Rickman, people like Johnny Galecki pops up, Malin Ackerman pops up, playing Debbie Harry, Kyle Gallner in an early role plays Lou Reed, Taylor Hawkins plays Iggy Pop. It's definitely one worth checking out. You guys can find this on Tubi if you're interested. I'm always interested in like music stuff, you know what I mean? Like whether it's like a rock biopic about somebody, or in this case, a famous rock club. Like here in New Jersey, we have a famous rock club called the Stone Pony. And this is where like Bruce Springsteen did a lot of his early shows at. It's about 45 minutes from where I live. Bryan Adams did a lot of early shows there. I think I'm the only one in New Jersey that isn't in love with Bruce Springsteen. I like his greatest hits, but like I'm not like in love with him. And that's like, if you admit that to other New Jersey people, you're pretty much excommunicated. Like you kind of have to like whisper that under your breath, because it's like this thing from New Jersey, you automatically have to like fall in love with Bruce Springsteen, because he's like, he's part of the New Jersey icon. You can't talk shit about pizza in New Jersey. you can't talk shit about pork roll, and you can't talk shit about Bruce Springsteen. Those are the rules for living in New Jersey. Yeah, so this movie's worth checking out. It's definitely worth your time. So yeah, those are a handful of things that I caught. That all brings us to the film we're going to be talking about today, guys. Like I said, we're going to be talking about. I'm going to just use the American title, Snow White, so I don't fuck up and again, pardon my language, so I don't screw up the Spanish title. And this is an interesting take on the original story by the Brothers Grimm, Jacob and Wilhelm, who published the story back in 1812. It's an interesting reinterpretation of the original source material, and I do use reinterpretation because it's a silent film, and it's also in black and white. And there's a lot of interesting things to talk about, so I'm really excited about getting into it. But I figured before we do that, I'll talk a little bit about behind the scenes stuff. We'll talk about, first of all, Mr. Pablo Berger. We'll talk about a little bit how he made the film. So he shot the film on color film stock and then desaturated back to black and white in post-production. It didn't do too well here in America and in Canada. I think it only grossed like $279,000. But worldwide gross, it made just under $3 million, which isn't too bad. But Mr. Pablo Berger was born in Spain. Some films that people know him from, I think more recently, Robot Dreams. Like I said, that came out in 2023. I think it didn't hit the States until 2024. And that was nominated for an Academy Award. I think it lost out to The Boy and the Heron by Miyazaki.
Yeah, Miyazaki, yep.
Yeah, Miyazaki's a tough guy to beat, guys. These days, he's a tough one to beat. Back when Princess Mononoke came out, like if you're like me, I had no idea who he was. But nowadays, you hear Miyazaki, and his films even get a release in like wide release. Like Boy and the Heron was playing locally. Like if you go back 10 years ago, you couldn't find a Miyazaki film at your local multiplex. That was like something you see in an art house theater. Yeah, it got nominated for some Academy Awards. He did a couple other films. He did a film called Two Stupid Eggs in 2008. He did a film called Torremolinos, 73 and 03. And he did a film in 2017 called Abracadabra. I've seen Abracadabra, and that's also, I've really enjoyed that. So he doesn't have a ton under his filmography, but the three that I've seen, I think are all interesting films. I'm going to talk about the inspiration. So the inspiration for the film began when our writer-director Pablo Berger saw a photograph of a bullfighting in a painting by an artist named Cristina Garcia. That's where it all kind of stemmed from. And then Berger went from there, and he said, well, I like this. I'm really just taken in by this photograph. So he decided to develop the screenplay, and he worked on it for many, many years, trying to raise funds for it. And then in 2011, he was working on storyboards for it. And at this point, he had been working on it for over 8 years. And he was about to begin principal photography on the film when news reached him from his friend that had just attended a local film festival, that a film called The Artist had been shown at the 2011 Cannes Film Festival. Now, I don't know if anyone's seen the film The Artist. That's also a black and white film. It's a silent film. It did pretty well. I think it won an Academy Award. He said, I was in my office in Madrid doing the storyboards for my film when my friend told me about this. And he's like, I just completely threw me off. He said, the whole high concept of my film was completely gone. He said, you know what? Doesn't matter. I'm going to keep going strong. I've got a unique idea. Blancanieves is basically a love letter to European silent cinema, in particular French silent films. 2012, what's interesting, saw the interpretation or adaptations of two other films based off the Brothers Grimm story. We had Snow White and the Huntsman that came out in 2012. And we also had another one called Mirror, Mirror, both which came out. Those were both produced by major studios. The difference is his was an independent production. Those were backed by major studios. I think part of the reason, his film also probably didn't gross as well is because his is more of an art film. I think it's an interesting film. So I'm going to talk about our cinematographer next, Kiko de la Rica. Now, again, a lot of these films are Spanish films. So I just kind of highlighted the ones that I think people might be familiar with. Some of these have translated over to America and they found an audience. He's worked on The Last Circus with Alex de la Iglesia. He also worked on Witching and Bitching. He did a film called The Oxford Murders and a film called Commonwealth. All those are with Alex de la Iglesia.
I was going to say, Witching and Bitching is one of those films that has a lot of curiosity aroused in myself, right?
Yeah.
I think its original title is Los Brujas de Zugarramurdi. The initial things when I went back and kind of like, well, why does this film kind of like ring a bell? And it came about because it's kind of a unique Spanish movie because they don't really do a lot of like shock value horror from what I understand. But the way I read it was this movie kind of goes a little bit over the top with some of its stuff. So Witching and Bitching, La Brujas de, you guys got that. I think that's going to be on my next or soon to watch. Number one, for the title alone as it's translated, but number two, because I really want to see what, and the great thing was, it didn't have like, oh, it's garbage. It's like pretty decent movie to check out.
Well, I would say the same thing for his film, The Last Circus, in the same sense. It definitely goes places that you wouldn't expect. Because unfortunately, a lot of these filmmakers from different countries, sometimes they don't always have success outside of their home country. Yeah. But he's one of these guys that have translated his career over here as well. He's kind of made his own unique stamp, as we always say. That whole auteur theory was just great. Our cinematographer also worked on another film with Pablo Berger. He worked on Abracadabra, and he also worked on a film called Mediterraneo, which won the Goya Award, which is the Spanish Academy Awards, basically. And he was also nominated for a Goya Award for the film I just talked about, The Last Circus. He has a little bit of a little pedigree to him. When we move on to our composer, I'm going to talk about a gentleman named Alfonso de Villavanga. And he has worked on films like, again, he's worked with our director on Robot Dreams, which he was also nominated for a Goya Award. He worked on Abracadabra. He worked on a film called The Bookshop, which is also nominated for an award, for the Goya Award. He worked on the film Trans-Siberia, Kill Me Tender, and Things I Never Told You. And again, a lot of these guys do have a lot more to their filmography. I'm just focusing on titles that possibly people might be familiar with. With our editor, we have a gentleman named Fernando Franco. He's worked on Robot Dreams. He's worked on The Rite of Spring, a film called Morar, Wounded, Subsuelo, and a bunch of other stuff. Now, normally I don't talk about production designers. I wanted to mention this guy just because I'm going to play my hand early. That element of the film I thought was gorgeous, the production design. And this guy is a guy named Alain Beny, and he worked on Leatherface 2017. He worked on The Machinist with Christian Bale in 2004, Abracadabra. He worked on that film I just mentioned, Trans-Siberian. And he has a bunch of other credits to his name. But those are some of the titles that, again, people might be familiar with. And that's our main behind-the-scenes people. Now I'm going to talk about the cast. Playing the role of Carmen Valita, or Snow White, if you will, is an actress named Macarena Garcia. Besides being in this, she was also in a TV show called The Ministry of Time, which ran from 2017 to 2020, a film called Holy Camp in 2017, something called Palm Trees in the Snow in 2015, and a bunch of other films. I was really, really impressed by her performance, especially because, like I said, when you're not dealing with delivering dialogue, it's hard to pull off these performances because everything's through body language,
Yeah, and I think one of her more recent 2023 films, La Masias, The Messiah, she got a really, really good reviews and a lot of accolades for her performance in that.
Oh, okay. I'm going to have to make sure somehow I missed that one. I'll have to write that down and try to see if I can track it down. Playing her father, we have Daniel Giménez Cacho.
Giménez.
Okay, thank you. He plays the role of Antonio Vallalta, the father. He's basically a Spanish bullfighter, and he's pretty renowned in this film before some other things happened, which we'll get into. He's been in stuff like Kronos. Here we go. We got a Del Toro film, and I think that's Del Toro's first film from '92. He's worked with Mr. Pedro Almodovar in Bad Education in 2004. He's worked with Mel Gibson, of all people, in Get the Gringo in 2012. He's also worked with William Dafoe in Siberia in 2020. And he worked on a film that got a lot of acclaim that came out in 2001, Y2 Mama Tembian, playing the mother, who unfortunately something tragic happens early on. We have an actress, Ima Cuesta. She's been in some films like Everybody Knows in 2018, Three Many Weddings in 2013, Invader in 2012, The Bride in 2015, and something called The Red Eagle, which came out in 2011. Playing the role of the grandmother, we have an actress named Angela Molina. She's playing the role of Donna Concha. Now, this one, she has, a big one. She's worked with Mr. Almodovar in '97 with Live Flesh. She actually worked with an Italian director. She worked with one of my favorite directors, Mr. Giuseppe Tornatore. She worked on 2 films with him, The Unknown Woman, which came out in 2006, and she worked with him on Barria, which came out in 2009. She also worked with Emilio Estevez, he actually directed like 2 or 3 films. I've seen 2 of them, and they're both really good. One of them was called The Way, that came out in 2010 with Martin Sheen. Have you ever seen that?
I have not.
It's a solid film. And I was impressed by his directing skills. She also worked on one more Almodovar film. She worked on a film in 2009 called Broken Embraces, which is also another solid little Pedro Almodovar film. When we get to the evil stepmother, Encarna Evil, that's her name. Even I can't mess that one up. Played by Maribel Verdú. Not another one. She worked with our director in Abracadabra in 2017. She was actually in the Flash film in 2023. That threw me off. I don't remember that, but that's interesting.
Playing Barry Allen's mother.
Yeah, that's wild. And another one that's worked with Mr. Del Toro. She worked on him with Pan's Labyrinth in 2006. Not a bad little career, and a lot of little crossover films, Now, playing the younger version of our hero, little Carmen, I wasn't going to write this down at first, but she does such a good job, I didn't want to skip over her. We have an actress named Sofia Oria, and she hasn't done a lot of films. She did a film in 2012 called Invader, and then she's done a bunch of TV, but not a huge career. Very good job. I'm really impressed by her. Playing the role of Don Martin, who's the manager, is a gentleman named Ramon Barria. He's worked with our director before, again, Abracadabra, Tora Molino 73, and he worked on a film called Everybody Knows. The next group of people I'm going to talk about play the role of our dwarfs in the film. They do actually have pivotal supporting roles. I felt like I didn't want to discredit them by not mentioning them. We have an actor named Sergio Dorado, who plays Rafita. I really like his take on this character, and we'll get into that when we talk about the script. He's been only in a couple films. He was in a Christmas film called The Night My Dad Saved Christmas, and then he was in another film called In Family I Trust. That came out in 2019. We have next an actor named Emilio Guevara. Now, he's playing the role of Jesusin, or otherwise known as the Grumpy Dwarf. His interpretation of that character in this film, I think, is very interesting. And again, I'll save my opinions for when we get into the actual script. He's worked on a film like Killing God in 2017, and he also worked on the Christmas film I just mentioned, The Night My Dad Saved Christmas in 2023. Next up, Alberto Martinez, who plays Josefa. He was in not a lot, unfortunately. He did a movie in 2014 called The Distance. Next up, we have Jinsen Anazako playing Juan. Also, not a big career. He was in the film The Distance that came out in 2014. And up next, we have Michael Lagos as Manolin. He was also in a couple interesting films. He was in that film we mentioned, The Last Circus. And he also was in a film with Viggo Mortensen. Now, this is a Viggo Mortensen film that I never heard of before. It came out in 2006 called The Captain a la Triste, The Spanish Musketeer. Never heard of it before in my life. You would think like an actor like Viggo Mortensen, you would think, I would have heard of that one before. But no, almost there, guys, with our actors. We have Jimmy Munoz as a Victorino. Blancanieves, sadly, is his only credit. So, and that wraps up, I think, hopefully I didn't miss anybody, that wraps up our main cast. At this point, John is going to go over and get a little bit into our story.
Hey, yeah, thank you. So we are going to talk about, as John had mentioned, we're going to be talking about Blancanieves, Snow White. And it opens up to an empty city, right? You're getting different shots underneath some bridges and arches, and there's like nobody in sight. And of course, the placard, like in the silent movies, comes up and says, "Where is everyone?" Well, what we find out is they're all heading to the bullfighting rink. It must be like Saturday night, or you know how like Monster Truck was like Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. They're going to bullfighting. We see then in the dressing room a matador. We see it's Antonio Villata. We see that, and as he exits and starts making his way to the bullfighting ring, we see just how popular Antonio is. He's getting his picture taking. Reporters are there asking for quotes and such. And then as we see him enter the bullfighting rink, we kind of see his wife with her mother, excited, nervous to, support, as rest of the crowd's already excited, right? They're already cheering and stuff. You don't hear the cheering again, silent film. However, what you do then see is a placard that basically says 6 bulls versus 1 matador.
You're like, this guy's insane.
Pretty much. And, to follow up on that point, because as the bullfighting match begins, Antonio gets on both knees and he drapes his muleta, right, which is the cape that the matadors use, across himself. And he's just like, luncheon is served. And his wife is in the crowds like, nervous, shocked, but they open the gates and here comes the bull, to which Antonio easily, deftly avoids the bull's charge. He continues his dance with the bulls, graceful movements with his muleta. The bulls can't touch him. This guy really is good. Yeah. So right before the final bull comes out, he comes out and he dedicates this last fight to his wife and his child to be born. And you're like, wow, this is going to be nuts. Wow, because it's kind of like a mean looking bull.
Yeah.
With like drool and stuff dripping out of its mouth. You're like, wow. Like Cujo's cousin or something.
They inject him with the extra steroids.
Something. As the match begins, again, Antonio, he's just doing his grace, right? The crowd's going, ole! You can read the lips. Ole! And he's just, the bull can't touch him. So during a slight pause, Antonio goes to, I guess you could say, his corner to retrieve his sword, right? Because he's going to land the killing blow. As he starts eyeing up the bull, the unthinkable happens. Apparently he missed a step because the bull gores him and tramples him. It's an awful sight. And what we then see is in the hospital, the doctors are trying to work on Antonio. However, they cut to a scene where, because of the shock and just the realization that her husband's probably dead, Carmen goes into labor. So they wheel her in, perform an emergency delivery. It's kind of a beautiful back and forth how, while they're trying to save one life on the edge of death, Carmen is giving life. Next, we see, as they're working on him, that yes, eventually they can stabilize Antonio. However, Carmen passes, giving birth to Blancanieves. I believe her name in the movie was Little Carmen.
Yeah.
But she died in childbirth. Then we see Antonio wake up. And it's been a few days later, right? But he realizes, as the doctor comes in to start checking in on him, he tells the doctor, the placard says, I can't feel my arms or my legs. And Antonio's paralyzed. The bull won that fight.
Yeah.
From there, we see Encarna, the evil nurse, because you initially see her and wow, if I had a nurse like that, I'd have been like, stay the hell away from me.
And the first thing that the first thought, just to pop in for a second, that popped in my mind when I saw her is I thought Nurse Ratchet.
Oh
Like,
gosh.
dude, when I first saw this film, like
I
years
will
ago,
I
saw
will take Nurse Ratchet. I will take Nurse Ratchet.
There's also one other thing briefly I just want to mention, which I thought was really interesting in the way it was shot. When you see him and they put the mask over his face and he's about to go into surgery, he sees his beautiful wife standing in front of him,
Yeah.
because he's like half out of it, and they're about to put anesthesia on him and put him into surgery, and then just before he goes out, he sees the evil nurse
Right.
pop out, which I think was a really cool imagery. So I just want,
Yeah, I mean that tells you that Antonio was thinking of his wife. He wants,
yeah,
it's in essence, he's no longer fighting a bull. He's fighting for his ability to be back with his wife. From there, when the doctor starts walking out, that nurse, Encarna, walks in with his newborn daughter,
yeah,
and they deliver the news. His wife didn't make it.
yeah,
He becomes despondent to the point where, he just turns his head and they walk away with the newborn. The movie then jumps several years later, where we see little Carmen has grown up a bit, and apparently it's her birthday. She's standing in her birthday gown. Her grandmama is trying to hem the dress, and she's just dancing. She's just having a good old time. What it's revealed is she's listening to her mother's song. What that reveals is that Carmen, Antonio's wife, was actually a apparently famous singer.
yeah,
She had her own record. It was crazy. So what happens there then is before they do the birthday festivities, she goes to church where she prays because she has not seen her father in years. She
yeah.
prays to see her father, to which a delivery person arrives and delivers a birthday gift and tells her it is from her father.
Mm.
She opens it up and it reveals it's an old phonograph. It's the old style record player. But she gets up and she chases after the delivery guy. She's thinking that her father was in the car. However, she's unsuccessful. We cut then to the festivities. They're having fun. They're having a nice time with her new phonograph, what her mom's record, puts it on the phonograph, begins playing it, and is so inspired by listening to her daughter's voice again that she herself starts dancing, and she's twirling,
And a
and
pet chicken gets involved, and
yeah, she is very graceful
yeah,
on her feet, and it's a beautiful sight. And little Carmen is in amazement watching her grandmama until she has a heart attack. She falls down, unfortunately, right before Carmen passes away. So now little Carmen has lost not only her mom, but the only other relative that she's grown up knowing, her grandmother. She, of course, in following the tradition of the Snow White tale, is forced to go back and live with her father and his new wife, soon to be revealed as just how truly evil and depraved of a stepmother she is. When she arrives at the new home, Encarna is actually kind of graceful, right? It's a little devious how she charms and talks to little Carmen, like, welcome to our home. This is the first floor. Don't ever go up to the second floor. I will kick your tail. Okay, now we're starting to
turns
see it.
off quickly.
Yeah, it's starting to see it. So, but she shows around the house, little Carmen, about, how beautiful this house is, how beautiful this is. Look at this. Now we're going to go to your room, which is down in the basement. And it's basically like a little root cellar area that she takes little Carmen. We have another scene where then we see Encarna attempting to cut little Carmen's hair. Like, okay, she's going to, give her a nice trim, make her prim and proper. And hell no. It's like going into the army. She starts cutting off all her long locks, her long, beautiful locks. God, what a B word, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What a B word she just did. And then she puts her to work as one of the simple servants. All during this time, as she's working, she is not allowed on the second floor. She can't see her father. She doesn't know if he's actually upstairs, where he could be. But she does her chores until one day when she has to go out to the chicken coop. She finds a chicken that she named Pepe. But Pepe like, hey, how you doing? I'm out. And Pepe starts running away. While she's chasing Pepe, we see then too Encarna with her little entourage is actually out there hunting rabbits.
Yeah.
So she's out in the field, and then we cut back to little Carmen chasing Pepe. Pepe is a little smart little chicken, and he begins running into the house or the first floor, but then she spots him up on the stairs going to the second floor. Well, this can only lead one way. So she continues chasing Pepe until she finds a room almost like at the end of the hall.
Yeah.
She opens the door and she sees a very tall wheelchair. Carmen has finally found her father. He does not immediately recognize her until she stands directly in front of him, and Antonio looks into little Carmen's eyes, to which she has her mother's eyes.
Yeah.
The lights come on. He comes out of his haze. They're reunited. It's great. However, during this point where they're being reunited and we think, man, it's really great. We're going to see what's going to happen now. Encarna comes back to the house with her hunting party. They hear this, so apparently Carmen has to, again, because she's not allowed on the second floor, she's got to skedaddle. She's got to hide. Encarna comes in to check on Antonio. She sees that he is alone and does not see little Carmen. So she's like, okay. Then she goes back to her room, to which little Carmen comes back out, another hug and kiss for Papa, and decides to try to sneak back down to the second, back down to where she belongs, the first floor with the other workers. However, what is revealed is on her way back, little Carmen peeps through the peephole.
Oh yeah, this sort of gets.
Oh,
never do that again.
Oh, that little girl. I don't know how she wasn't scarred for life, but what little Carmen sees is Encarna, the evil stepmother. She's a freak. She is a freak. Barry Allen's mom is a freak. She is in this dominatrix outfit with, I guess it's their driver or one of the helpers, and he's just being totally submissive on all fours, and she's just, yeah, yeah. Just leave it at that. A few months pass, and little Carmen and Antonio are sneaking time, right? Basically waiting for Encarna to leave so they can come back, catch up, do things, play, dance, at which one scene, which was really great. It's a little heartbreaking too, to which she plays her mother's record.
Yeah.
He has flashbacks to Carmen, realizes that, the only thing left of his wife is his daughter. So she's very, very happy about that. However, during this time as they're dancing, she's spinning, round and around with her father, to which there's a mirror on the wheelchair, which is glistening light, to which Encarna sees it. So she kind of knows what's up. And although she checks in on him, she doesn't find little Carmen there. She knows because that night she invites little Carmen to dinner. First time they ever did it. And she served chicken. Yes, you people can kind of guess
where we're going with this.
Yeah, I mean, it's that little bit of a fatal attraction.
Yeah.
She's being served Pepe. Years pass now from here. Little Carmen has grown up and she's still working. What we see too, it's a great shot. It's a beautiful shot where she's doing the laundry, right? And because during this time as she's reuniting with her father's teaching her a little bit about bullfighting.
Yeah.
Right? So with the laundry, you actually see little Carmen moving and the moments holding some linens, but she's treating it as a muleta. And it's great. However, unfortunately, she receives news from one of the other workers. Her father died. It's not a secret how he possibly passed away, because what the film does show is Encarna is tired of taking care of Antonio. B word, I wish I knew the Spanish word for that B word, pushed him down the stairs, wheelchair and all. He died from his fall.
If I could just interject for 1 second, there's one interesting thing that I do want to back up and say. When she's serving him the chicken, when she's serving little Carmen the chicken at dinner, she tells little Carmen, she says, "Just you see what's happening with this dinner that you had." Basically, she goes, "If you disobey me again, you know who will be next." And
Yeah,
there's a little title that shows up, and you know who will be next is obviously alluding to her father. So there's a
right.
little bit of, which I thought was like, oh my God. Like literally, it's one thing to kill the pet chicken, but now we're going from that extreme to literally foreshadowing what you just said about the
Yeah,
father,
exactly.
which is
Yeah.
nuts.
What ends up happening then, and I guess I don't know if it's tradition or not, but what they do is because Antonio Volata was a kind of superhero in terms of the bullfighting world, they dress him back up as a matador, and staff, stepmother, they all take pictures with his corpse, like kind of like sitting in a chair.
Yeah.
And again, you see how evil it can be, because as they're taking photographs, she's smiling like she's in a glamour shoot, right? It's kind of disgusting.
Oh, it's absolutely.
Carmen, little Carmen, even though she's grown up now, she's a very young woman. She is in tears, right? Sitting next to her father when it's her turns. Everyone else has left. And the photographer still being a jerk, saying, smile, smile. And she's got tears running down her face. Later on that day, that night, Encarna tells little Carmen, I want you to go far, far away and get these wildflowers for your father. So she gets in the car with the driver, who you'll recognize is the little submissive. Let's put it, he was the gimp, right? He was a little submissive gimp to Encarna, and he drives them out far, far away into the woods, where they finally pull up to a spot. She sees a growth of wildflowers. She starts picking the wildflowers, but then you see the driver starting to do his impersonation of O.J. Simpson, put his little black leather gloves on, and he attacks her.
Comparison.
Yeah, he attacks her. She gets the upper hand by giving him a really nicely placed knee kick, and he recovers in just enough time that he catches her as she was running away close to a riverbank, and he chokes her to the point where he believes she's dead, throws her body into the river to float away. We then see kind of like the first person perspective, her eyelids opening up, a little blurred vision, and then we see Rafita looking down on her, smiling, right? He had pulled her from the river. He ends up taking her back to what we are now calling the Seven Dwarfs. Inside there, she wakes up and she sees all of them like staring at her. She doesn't know what's going on. She asks what's going on. They all introduce themselves, to which they say, what's your name? And then that's where it's revealed through this whole ordeal. She got amnesia. Well, we're going to call you Blanca Nueves because you're so fair. And then what you end up seeing is outside, as she looks outside a window, on the side of their home, it turns out it's a traveling wagon. They're a traveling act, right? They are called Los Enanitos Toreros, little bullfighting dwarves. So what then we discover is, as they help nurse her back to health, she travels with them, and she discovers that, yes, they are a bullfighting group, and they travel town to town to put on these little sideshows where they fight bull calves. During one of these exhibitions, everything's going great until, as you call them, right, Grumpy Elf, Jesusine is actually trampled by one of these bull calves. Even though she has amnesia, instinct kind of kicked in. She jumps over the fence. She's bringing with her a muleta, and she fights the little bull calf, and the crowd is loving it. Everyone's surprised. Everyone's amazed. And again, everyone's loving it. Except Jesusin. He's like,
The spotlight's off him.
yeah, the spotlight is now off of him. They continue to travel, continue to do more shows. They gain fame, they gain popularity, not because of Jesusin, because of Blancanieves.
He becomes the star of the show.
She is the star of the show now. On a road trip to another town, they are met by a, let's put it this way, right? You ever meet somebody on the road and they're like, hey, I'm an entertainment manager. I can make you famous and rich. Don't sign anything. The back and forth, it reveals that he is a bullfighting manager.
Yes.
However, she lets it slip that she can't read. Again, her amnesia, she's forgotten how to do a lot of things. But he convinces her, this backstabbing manager convinces them that I can make you famous and rich, and how would you like to fight at the big ring in Seville?
Yeah.
All you have to do is sign a contract. And the beauty of that scene is, as they show the contract, they show the little highlight that says, you will be in service to me forever.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I was like, okay,
Right?
not a bad deal at all. Of course, sounds perfectly legit.
No. So she signs, and they end up going to Seville. Guess who packed up her shit and moved to Seville? Yeah, Encarna, the evil stepmother, who is apparently doing some kind of Photoshop in her new home and asking the lady, I'm going to be on the front page, right? Oh, yeah, sure. So, yeah, so now we know that the evil stepmother is in Seville. So what are we expecting here? Well, like the movie title, right? Nothing but trouble. So what we end up seeing is, as they're preparing for the bullfighting match, Grumpy Elf, Jesusin, is trying to sabotage Blancanieves. He switches the bull's nameplates so that she is not fighting a bull calf. She's fighting El Toro, the mature bull. I mean, what's going on here? Why would Jesusin, dude? I'm sorry. Jesusin, look up here. Look at me when I'm talking to you. What are you doing? As they travel to the ring, she is met in the tunnel by Antonio's old manager. He had caught word of Blancanieves and lets her know that her father would be proud of her. Well, just him speaking to her about her father begins triggering some memories of her father, right? It's starting to slowly start to come back. They begin the exhibition. She's fighting at first the little bull calves, but then what we see then is the crowd, as they prepare for the penultimate match. The manager starts cheering the crowd on, egging the crowd on, like, Blancanieves is Antonio Velata's daughter. Everyone starts going, oh, Antonio Velata's daughter. Wow, they have a celebrity. They start getting more excited. And then the bullpen opens, and here comes out this charging, mean-looking bull.
Yeah, he's the maniac bull.
What we then see is Encarna has discovered that little Carmen, Blancanieves, is alive.
Yeah.
She only finds this because that photo shoot that she did was published. However, because of the news of Blancanieves and the rest of the seven dwarves are showing up in Seville, the newspaper, the magazine did a whole spread about her.
Yeah.
To which Encarna's article comes after those, and the picture they used was the back of Encarna. Total humiliation, total rage starts taking over her, to the point where, because she knows they're coming to the fight in Seville, she starts making her way to the arena. And we see then, as it all culminates, Encarna is sitting in the crowd. As she is watching, she's already got something devious in her plan, and we see her kind of like reveal this apple. What happens then is Blancanieves fights this mature bull. The Molueta is flowing. She is parrying and moving out of the way. It's a brilliant, brilliant bullfight. To which, when she goes to get her sword, As soon as she touches the sword, more flashbacks come back to her because of what she was reuniting with her father and what he was teaching her about bullfighting. To the point where, as she stands with the sword to get ready to deliver the killing blow, the manager takes out a handkerchief and he starts waving it. He starts waving it. The rest of the crowd pulls out their handkerchiefs and they start waving their handkerchiefs. And what happens? Apparently, this is a very, very rare thing to happen in bullfighting. The mayor, the leader of the town, pulls out his handkerchief and just drapes it over the edge. This rarity is that the bull has been pardoned.
Yeah.
He's going to get to live out the rest of his life siring more little bulls. He's got the golden ticket. Crowd goes nuts. Crowd goes nuts. As part of the celebration, Encarna starts making her way down to the bullfighting ring, carrying this apple. And what happens is Jesusine accidentally bumps into her. She drops the apple, he picks it up, hands it back to her, and she continues on her way. Not before making eye-to-eye contact with Jesusine. She offers the apple to Blancanieves, and it's a brilliant like little overlay that shows that the apple has been poisoned.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Beautiful shot.
Blancanieves takes the apple, and just as she's getting ready to take a bite, she receives a rose and is escorted to the center of the ring, to which there is more praise and accolades. And then all the while, Encarna's watching through her little spyglass doohickey, I guess those opera glasses, I guess you could say, to see what's going on. And finally, Blancanieves takes a bite of the apple and she collapses. Josefina, Rafita, Jesusine, they're all, what's going on? And then as soon as Jesusine looks over and sees what had fallen from Blancanieves' hands, the apple, he pieces it together. And he stands up and he points directly to Encarna's like, you're the one that gave her this poisoned apple. And he takes some of the dwarves and they chase after Encarna. Encarna tries to lose them in some of the bullpens. She should have made a right turn at Albuquerque because she ended up locking herself into a pen with a bull. And her fate is sealed as we see El Toro shadow with those massive horns coming in.
That's one of my favorite shots of the film. That
beautiful,
because it's alluding to everything, but you don't. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you allude to things, but you don't see it, and it works so effective. Just like in a good horror film, you see the shadow, and you know her fate is sealed.
Yeah, and Encarna basically closes her eyes, begins sobbing because she knows what's happened. What we see next is unlike any other version of Snow White. It's unlike even the Brothers Grimm's fairy tale version of Snow White. What we see is apparently it's a sideshow, and there's a manager in the sign. I didn't fully translate it. All I know, it says Blancanieves, here lies Snow White. And he's selling tickets for people to take a chance to kiss her, to wake her up. That's the story he is selling. And I will say this, keyword here is story. Because as we go through the entrance, what we see is in a glass coffin, little Carmen, Blancanieves, is laying in state. Gentlemen and even ladies start lining up and one after another deliver a kiss. And again, unlike other versions of Snow White, which was pretty much universal, she never wakes up. Not with the strangers, at least. In the end, what we see then is Rafita has stayed with her all this time. He was truly in love with Carmen Blancanieves. He had to stay. He's taking care of her, combing her hair, fixing her makeup, even after all those people. That's how certain diseases spread, people. Don't do that. In the end, what we see here is possibly one of the moments we all wait for when we're watching a version of Snow White. Rafita climbs up and he gives her a gentle kiss on the lips. She doesn't wake up. No. He is not the Prince Charming that we're all used to knowing, saving her life. He lies down next to her in this coffin and the movie ends. Blancanieves does not have a happy ending.
No, it's grim and dark, but even like you said, and I'll go on when I get my opinion, but even the the original story has an ending where she manages to get
She comes out alive. That said, that is the movie, quickly summed up. However, what I will say this to give my thoughts briefly. This movie was really well done. And I will tell you what impressed me the most about this movie. Back in the silent film era days, right? You had a pit orchestra playing live music to the beats of the ebb and flows of the movie. Blancanieves, this movie does the same thing. You hear the pit orchestra warming up their instruments, and for the exception of when they're playing Carmen's mother's album, this movie is fully orchestrated. It is brilliant. It is lovely as a fan of classical music myself, because my daughter does play, also among the other things she does, the string bass, right? The double bass, the stand-up, the big one. This movie, it takes the tale of Snow White that we are so much familiar with to, 3/4 of the journey that we're all kind of used to, right? We're kind she meets, her Prince Charming, she meets the dwarves, there's the evil stepmom. However, in this version, what we see too is, it could be a relatable tale, right? She is reunited with her father. The evil stepmother, how the rest of the folks just don't catch on to what the hell she's been doing. I will never figure that part out. Her movements, using bullfighting as the centerpiece of this story, again, fantastic, well done. From a technical aspect, I love that it was in black and white. My only criticism would have been that if you're trying to emulate the old silent era film styles, you had to have a little bit more of the vignetting around the corners.
Sure, yeah.
And a little bit of the pulsating light, the little black and white flicker as it goes through, right? Yeah. I think that could have added a lot more, because some of it does show that, it's just basically desaturated footage. Those negatives aside, I truly did enjoy this film, and this was a very first time watch for me. Everything that I was expecting out of a homage to a silent film did come to fruition. Mm-hmm. Again, the pit orchestra warming up their instruments. I'm like, oh, wow, they actually did that. Mm-hmm. To the placards in trying to read their lips, to the quick shots, right, to show that, we had the Los Toreros right there, to Seville, the shots of the different cities, which I believe, I didn't dive deep, but I believe those are still functioning arenas where they do hold bullfighting matches.
Yeah, because it's still a huge part of the culture, from what I understand down there. That's like
absolutely,
like we have our football and baseball, and for them that's just as big. That and like soccer.
Yeah, exactly. To the heartbreak, and little Sofia Orilla she was brilliant as a little Carmen, right? I mean, it was fantastic. Carmen Blancanieves, now growing up and being the leader of this like traveling group. It is actually nice. Jesusine, yes, they play their part, right? You had Grumpy Elf, you had Sleepy Elf, but you had the different versions of the elves that we kind of grown accustomed to. It ends on a note that, oh man, I knew it. Rafit is always smiling. He's always looking at her with these loving eyes. He's going to wake her up.
Yeah.
And then you see in that final shot, which I thought was brilliant, where they initially start zooming in on her face in the coffin, but then they do a right side profile, but they're zooming in, and you see a single solitary tear fall from her eye.
Yeah,
it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
This film is definitely a worthwhile homage. Much respect to putting it out there. I enjoyed this a lot more than I would have allowed myself to, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Pablo Berger, thank you, sir. I truly appreciate your different take on this. And, in summary, let me just say, Blancanieves from 2012, it is more than worth giving it time to watch. I think you would actually really enjoy it, because we all know what happened to the latest version.
Oh my God.
Rachel Ziegler, I hope she never works again. That is rough. That is
Yeah.
harsh. But for her to poop
Yeah.
on everything that is Snow White, the
Yeah.
different versions, especially Blancanieves, this version,
Oh, this
all
blows
those
out.
versions,
Yeah.
all those versions of Snow White, I don't care what you were trying to do, what you had to prove, what your
Yeah.
message was, your version sucked.
Trust me. I hear you.
Pure and simple, it sucked.
Yeah.
Okay? Blancanieves is a truly refreshing take, a refreshing retell of what we all know and love. However, I appreciate the realistic, humanistic
Yeah.
ending that was provided. This movie,
Yeah.
for me, I'll give it 2 thumbs up. Absolutely.
Nice. That's what we like to hear. Sign up for the Canopy app. They have a ton of good stuff on there. You can watch it for free. And if you like it, you're going to want to buy it, in my opinion. So I guess from there, I'm going to go into my thoughts, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to first talk about, and I'm sure there's going to be things that I miss, but I'm going to talk about like specific scenes that really just spoke to me. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the short story, and then I'm going to talk about my thoughts. The first thing in that first scene where her father is fighting the bull. One thing that I didn't catch on my first viewing is another thing that I think was the doom of him was there was a photographer that took a flash shot, and I think that kind of blinded him for a second, which also led to him being viciously attacked by the bull. So that's one scene that just specifically stood out to me, just because of the way it was shot. You see that the photographer shoot the shot, and you see the light in his eyes, and then all of a sudden we see the bull attack him. So I thought that was just really interesting. And then I already mentioned the one thing where he's getting the anesthesia, that one scene, and you see his loving wife, and then all of a sudden we see it's replaced by the evil stepmother. So I thought that was just from a technical level and just from a cinematic storytelling level, that was absolutely beautiful. The Holy Communion scene where grandmother dances with a chicken, you mentioned, that was great. And then again, we flash to this tragic scene where she has this heart attack and she's ushered away. That was just another absolutely amazing scene, just so well done. The dinner with the chicken, absolutely showing how horrific and how evil this version of the stepmother is. Now, we've seen other versions of the stepmother where she's pretty hardcore, but that's just absolutely, she's not messing around. And then, the grumpy elf, and just being jealous and how he deals with the jealousy by setting her up for failure. Like you said, the scene where we cut and we see at the arena, the final arena, and we see a scene of the stepmother, and we see a little scene to the side where we see her with a poison needle and going into the apple, and then there's a picture of a skull alluding to what's going to come. Absolutely just amazing. And then there's little things like the love story that's never fully developed, but you could see that it would play out with her and Rafita. There's a scene where they're in between and they're camping and they're watching fireworks together inside the little house. We see little scenes like that. Or we see a scene where they're dancing around the campfire and they're connecting. And then, of course, she's in this glass coffin, but he's by her side the whole time. And when he kisses her, like you said, the one tear rolls out off her face. In this version, if she had survived, you kind of feel like they probably would have been together. Well, at least that's my interpretation or how I'd like to interpret it. All these, and these are just a handful of different scenes that are in the film. There's so many little scenes in this film culminate in this wonderful, beautiful thing. And then when we get to the short story, what's interesting, I thought about the short story because I read it. It's only a couple pages. Even the short story, it ends with her waking up after being kissed by the prince. But what I also find interesting about the original short story is that the queen is punished by being forced to dance in red hot iron shoes until she dies. So the one good thing is that the evil stepmother always gets her due. It's just how they do it, and in this version, unfortunately, Snow White, unfortunately, doesn't have a happy ending. Of course.
I also thought one of the most, here's my most outstanding shot from this scene, because I thought it was just pure genius. Because again, in the original stories, in all the fairy tale versions that we've seen, Disney's Snow White, screw you, Rachel Ziegler. Remember, what is the saying? Mirror, mirror on the wall. She always has a mirror to talk to her. However, in Blancanieves, there is a scene where she kills little gimpy boy,
Yeah.
her little, simp. However, she looks at her reflection in a pool. I thought that was
Yeah.
genius. How that
Absolutely.
was shot, how that was done. It was just for a brief moment. That shot alone, to me, was the best shot out of this entire movie.
When the two brothers, the Grimm brothers, took the story, you're taking something that's either a folk tale or a fairy tale, and you're like, but this is done in a practical world. It's 1920 Spain, but still it's a practical world. So how do you insert part of that homage, as you put it, to this fairy tale or folklore? And that's their way of doing it. And it's so, like you said, it's so brilliantly done. They add some of that magic of a folklore fairy tale. So yeah, no, I mean, so those are some of the scenes that I really, really liked. I thought, the comparison between the original story and how that ends is also really interesting. And like you said, man, the fact that they ended it the way they did, this tragic note, it takes, be quite frank, and pardon my French, because I am trying to work on my French, or bad language, if you will. It takes balls to do that ending. When you think about the way this story has always been told, even like the Disney version, yes, there were dark moments for kids, but they never went fully dark. They always gave it enough like songs. They always gave it enough Disneyfication, I will say, enough happiness and a lot of like goofy moments. So even though there were some dark moments, they never went full dark. Yeah, no, this thing, you have a couple moments of hope. You see some happy scenes with her and her grandmother, Rafita, the reunion with the father, but ultimately they're not afraid to go dark and hit you. You know what I mean? And that takes a lot of guts to do that. You know,
and I was going to say, I mean, the closest we would have got to this prior to watching Blancanieves is from Shrek. I think it was Shrek 3. Remember, they had Snow White in there, right? And her scene was she's like distracting the guard. She's singing to the birds. She's singing to the birds. And then next thing you know, Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song comes in and she takes this evil look and she's just sends forth this fury of birds. That was a dark Snow White, but not. It was dark funny. However, Blancanieves, it caught me off guard when I saw that because again, if we go back to the source material, folks, because comic book guy, source material, canon,
we gotta fit it up, source material.
Totally deviated, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Snow White, Blancanieves, however you want to say it, is a tragic tale.
Yeah,
and I think ending with a tragic, version of this tale, complete sense.
Yeah, and then like I said, just to end my thoughts, I mean, obviously the technical stuff you can't from the production design. I mentioned Alain Denis or whatever his name was. I apologize. Between the production design, the costumes, the beautiful score. I mean, and obviously the cinematographer, the director or writer, everything kind of gels, and you get about as close to a perfect film as you're going to get, especially trying to take the idea of a fairy tale or folklore and to try to do it in a way where there's some realism without turning it into like, what was that movie that Reese Witherspoon did early in her career in the early 90s? She did one that was, it was a modern take on Red Riding Hood. And obviously, you know which one I'm talking about. Freeway. But that is leaning into the dark tones, and that's leaning into a little bit of society, comment on society, leaning a little on the humor. It's kind of pointing fun at things. You know what I mean? This is interpreting a dark, tragic fairy tale, but making it fresh and making it your own. And again, that whole auteur theory we always talk about a lot. This Pablo Berger guy, man, between this and Robot Dreams, you know what I mean? Those two films alone, like I said, a lot of people, I know you said you saw Robot Dreams, right?
Yes.
And this film alone, those two films alone, to me, I'll always be on the lookout after seeing those two. Like I said, his other film, Abracadabra and Toromolos 73, also, well, I haven't seen Toromolos 73, but I saw Abracadabra. Not as good as these two, but still pretty damn good. That, I'm sold, man. I'm gonna be looking out for whatever he does. You
Yeah,
know,
and that's the kind of scary part. I mean, and I want to be proven wrong because looking at Pablo's future projects, I don't see anything down the pipeline, and
family.
it kind of scares me that he's going to walk away. And Pablos, if you or anybody who knows Pablos is listening, please prove me wrong. I would love to see what he has next.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. I would absolutely kill it. I think it's just the fact that I haven't given up hope on his career, and the reason I say that is because this film, it was submitted for an American Academy Award. Just the fact that it was submitted, number one, and then you look at Robot Dreams, which actually did make it to our Oscars, and when you think about how many choices Spain has to pick from to actually narrow it down to where this one is picked as one of the nominees, the fact that it was given a nominee, I do kind of have hope. I keep hope that it will that alone will be able to be enough to leverage eventually when he has the right screenplay and the right project. I think
Yeah,
that'll put him in a position where he'll be able to get financing, hopefully.
yeah, yeah.
Because Robot Dreams definitely also, I'm going to just briefly mention it and then we'll end our episode, but that also has an ending not as tragic as this, but it has an ending that if you're watching the film, it does kind of a little bit blindside you. That ending of Robot Dreams.
Yeah.
People that are not familiar with it, it's about a dog who's lonely. He builds a robot, orders it. At some point, the robot unfortunately gets lost. At the end, you're kind of hoping that he reunites with him, but he doesn't. It still has a happy kind of ending. Go back and watch the episode. Go back and watch the movie. It's still on Hulu. But again, it also does have an ending that is kind of based in some form of reality of
Right.
what would likely happen in this story versus what we would want to happen. Like if that movie was produced by Disney or Pixar, we all know at the end you would have gotten the ending that you expected. So I feel like that tells me a lot about the director. He's not going for the easy ending. You know what I mean? He's going for an ending that you might feel sad, but you're going to feel something. You're going to feel something after you leave this film, and I think you're gonna keep thinking about it. Like this film, I actually had the pleasure of seeing this film. I saw it up in New York City. There's an old theater in New York City called the Paris Theater. It only has one screen. It's been there since like the 1920s or 30s, and I just stumbled onto the film. I just like, oh, this looks interesting. Um, and it's been in my head for a while. It's something I've always wanted to talk about. And then last year, Troy and Brad had Mike O'Neill, the guy that did Infinite Santa, and he said Robot Dreams was one of his favorite films. And it wasn't until I watched Robot Dreams that I realized same director. And I was like, oh, I have that film on DVD. I got to go back and rewatch it. I rewatched it. And I was like, I have to cover this movie. So it's funny how the world works, because I hadn't thought about Pablo Berger in years until, and then I saw Robot Dreams, maybe want to go back and revisit this. And I was like, I have to cover this for the show. So it's, like I said, it's interesting how the connections, how everything
Absolutely.
goes around.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, but that ends today's episode, guys. So we want to thank you, of course, for listening. And we look forward to talking to you guys some more. Next week, we have a pick for Mr. Cool here. Do you want to talk about it and announce it?
Yeah, since we are kind of like starting a new year and we're kind of going back, old father time to new father time, and I figured since we're kind of like going backwards a little bit, I kind of reached way back, especially with a legend himself still around. I believe he's making an appearance at Steel City Con. I got to double
Oh,
check
okay.
my notes, but we're talking about the legendary from Smokey and the Bandit. We're talking about Paul Williams.
No,
We're talking about Scott Baio, and we're talking about Jodie Foster in Bugsy Malone.
and I can't wait because I've never seen this one. I've
Oh,
never seen this one. Now with Scott Baio, I'm not going to get in. I try to keep not politics, but like the real life actor versus his presence on screen. I try to separate the two. It's hard sometimes, not politics, but just the way he acts in public. But I will say I haven't seen a lot of his filmography, not films. I've seen Zapped, and I love Zapped. It's a goofy movie, but I
Heather
love
Thomas. Yeah.
exactly. I love Zapped, and of course, like everybody else, I grew up watching reruns of Charles in Charge, and of
Charles and
course,
Church.
Joni Loves Chachi and Happy Days and all that stuff, but I haven't seen a lot of his actual film career other than Zapped. So I'm really curious because when you mentioned this to me, I was like, Bugsy Malone, and I'm thinking there's probably like some other version, and then looking, no, Bugsy Malone with Scott Baio and Jodie Foster. Yep. I'm like, what the, you know what I mean? So this will be a surprise for me. So I can't wait to talk about that. So I'm excited.
To it.
Yeah,
oh, me too.
So a quick just a quick announcement of shows you guys should be listening to. Of course, check out our buddies Troy and Brad. They just covered Van Damme's film The Quest, which he also directed. I've never seen it. I don't know if I should see it, or not, but I'm curious. It has piqued my interest. So Troy and Brad are talking about a whole month this month. It's interesting, of films directed by actors starring in the films and also directing. So that's a cool theme. So check that out. Of course, we got Jose and Mike, and as far as I know, they're actually recording today. And so their next episode, I think they're covering Primate. So that should be interesting.
Yep.
Of course, you got The Gentleman's Guide to Midnight Cinema with Sam and Will, always killing it with a nice double feature. We got Raiders of the Podcast, and these guys are always giving us 2 films, man. Every week they're doing the Lord's work, and they give us our monthly special where they cover 4 films. So check out Raiders of the Podcast. Of course, Caliber 9 from Outer Space with Rob and Joe, and of course we have Death by DVD with Harry Scott Sullivan, who I believe he moved recently, and he's trying to get his studio back in order and everything set up. But I'm hoping probably next month, maybe the month after that, he should be back in action. So those are all podcasts you guys should be checking out. And we look forward to talking to you guys next week at the movies. So thank you for joining us.
Buenos dias, mi amigos. Gracias.
Adios.